Right. Greetings to you all. Particularly today, my friends, on the occasion of Guru Purnima. What a splendid occasion it is to be here in the school, my alma mater. 47 years ago, exactly on this day, I joined the school. At that time, I had no idea that few years down the line, I'll be joining the National Defense Academy and thereafter spending 36 years in the Navy. But that's not the reason why I'm going to talk to you about the Indian Navy today. You know, navies, they say, are the silent service. They operate beyond the horizons, so we don't know much of what they do. So I'm talking to you about the Indian Navy because I believe it's a story worth telling. It is a wonderful story of how a force that was very small at the dawn of independence has now become one of the biggest and most powerful navies in the world. And how has the Indian Navy done it? But before that, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at the maritime canvas. Maritime means that which is associated with the seas and the oceans. Now do remember, India is the only country after which an ocean is named. And there's a reason for that. And that reason is rooted in geography and history. Have a look at our geography. Move away from our land borders and what we call the continental outlook. You will see that India is a maritime nation. The Indian peninsula juts into the Indian Ocean. We have a coastline of more than 11,000 kilometers. We have close to 1,400 islands. We have an exclusive economic zone of 2 million square kilometers, ladies and gentlemen. That's 2/3 of our land area, and that's the future base for sustainable development. We have many states and union territories bordering the sea. So there is certainly a maritime orientation to our geography. What about our history? Our ancients had far greater connection with the seas than perhaps some of us have today. The oldest dock in the world is in Lothal, present-day Gujarat, close to Ahmedabad. Those days, Lothal was close to the inner seas and not in land like now. This is more than 4,000 years ago. Our scriptures contain references to maritime activities. And for 2,000 plus years, India had a long list of empires, actors, people, connecting over the seas and oceans with the world from as far west as Rome and Greece to as far east as Japan and Korea, what we call the Indo-Pacific today. So there were great empires, of course, right from the times of Mauryas, the Guptas, and then all of the southern kingdoms, Kakatiyas, Andhras, Cholas, the great Cholas, Cheras, the Pandyas, the Vijayanagars, all of them had some connect. The Palas of Bengal, all of them had great connect with the sea. And the Kalingas, of course. Now this continued for a long time until we shut our eyes or turned our backs from the seas sometime in the 13th or 14th century. Then you know what happened. 2 centuries later, as Gopi sir said, the colonials came and they conquered us by the seas. That's an important thing to remember. Now cut therefore to today. Today, this geography is still important. The Indian Ocean is the busiest, smallest, but busiest ocean in the world. More than half of the global traffic takes place here. More importantly, more than 90% of India's trade, energy flows through the oceans. And almost 100% of communication, when we communicate to the world, is through undersea cables on the oceans. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the geography and history that informed the Indian Navy's planners when they set. When they set out to make in 1947, as Gopi sir said, limited resources and great vision is the best way to achieve your objectives. That is exactly what the Indian Navy planners had. But they were audacious in their hope. They said, we'll not be a coastal navy like the British wanted us to be. We will have aircraft carriers. We will have submarines. And they set out to build that navy. Now, it is not that the Indian Navy has not been in the forefront of operations. We'll come to that. But how did the Navy do it? How did the Navy achieve the status of becoming a formidable power in 75 years? 3 ways. One, it built up a good force. Second, it emphasized a great deal on professional training, on the hardware and software aspects of education and training. Third, it absorbed technology and stayed abreast with technology, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So these were the 3 ways in which it set out to do, despite having, like all the armed forces, a very busy operational canvas. What is this busy operational canvas? It started right after independence with Junagadh, October 1947, where the 3 armed forces operated together. Then 1961, liberation of Goa. 1971, the war with Pakistan. The Indian Navy played a magnificent role operating in both the oceans, both the theaters of war. We strangulated East and West Pakistan, and the reason you had more than 90,000 prisoners of war was because of that. Thereafter, whether it's Operation Pavan, 3 long years of that, or Operation Cactus, Maldives, Somalia in the early 90s, more recently when we have had crisis with Pathankot, Uri, Balakot, Galwan, the Indian Navy has been deployed right at the doorsteps of our antagonists. And this sends a message very clearly. But that's not the only thing that Navy does. Because navies operate in international waters, we also play a big role in diplomacy. When we talk today of neighborhood first or act east, remember that the Indian Navy gives a palpable physical connection when you send a ship there. So when you send a ship to distant waters, flying the Indian flag, showcasing Indian technology, having Indian cosmopolitan people on board, showcasing our culture and cuisine, you are showing both hard power and soft power in all parts of the world. And that is why they say navies or warships are sometimes the best ambassadors of the nation. And we also play a role in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Of course, all 3 services do that, but because, like I said, the navies operate in international waters, whether it was after the tsunami in 2004, Operation Rahat in Yemen in 2015, more recently Op Kaveri in Sudan. So there are international equities. You are noticed much more because of that. So all of this, an alchemy of all of this, makes the Indian Navy a considerably strong and powerful player. But what about technology? That is what I was telling you earlier. Now, technology, ladies and gentlemen, how the Indian Navy has absorbed or adapted it is by 4 I's. Improvisation, innovation, integration, and above all, indigenization. The Indian Navy has been building ships in India, making in India or make in India or Atmanirbharta has been the cornerstone of Indian Navy strategy right since independence. So in 1960, ladies and gentlemen, we built the first ship, INS Ajay, in 1960. At that time, we hadn't even built the first indigenous car in India. That happened only 30 years down the line. But we made the first ship. And last year, we made India's biggest ship, the biggest ship probably built in India's history, INS Vikrant. Look at this. Building an aircraft carrier is the very holy grail of shipbuilding. So today, you would all feel proud that India is building aircraft carriers, it's building submarines. You will be happy to know that out of the 41 ships that are on order, 39 are being built in India. So imagine what it does in terms of technology. Imagine what it does in terms of encouragement to local industry, medium, small industries. Imagine what it does to the local economy. So all of these are wonderful stories by themselves, and each one of them probably you can write a book about how the Indian Navy set out to do it. But let me illustrate this technology connect between the Navy and the civilian world through the lives of two people, or through the achievements of two people, if I can call them. One is a gentleman called Commodore Paul Raj, Arogyaswamy Paul Raj, and you can Google about him. Arogyaswamy Paul Raj, ladies and gentlemen, is an ex-NDA, ex-Navy officer who is today a professor emeritus at Stanford University. Okay? He is the founder of what is called MIMO, multiple input, multiple output technology, and this MIMO is the heart of 4G and 5G smartphones. So if today you are able to use smartphones with all these apps, you must thank this Navy officer called Commodore Arogyaswamy Paul Raj. And why is his direct connection to the Navy? His research started in designing indigenous sonars for the Indian Navy after the 71 war. There is another remarkable gentleman called Captain Mohan Ram. He is in Bangalore. Captain Mohan Ram is the person who was responsible for construction of many of these ships. After his retirement, he joined the TVS company, and in TVS, he designed the TVS Scooty. TVS was making losses at that time. He designed the TVS Scooty, turned around the company. So the man who designed some of the best warships also designed a great public utility two-wheeler. This is the way in which there is osmosis, or there is direct transfer of what skills you learn in the armed forces to bringing it to the civilian world outside. And this is the direct contribution, if I may say so, in some ways, of Indian Navy to technology. Let us sort of move aside from there to talk about what might have been the ifs of history, because this institutional memory is very, very important. We talked about the colonizers coming here. The city of Bijapur has a very direct connection to India being colonized, perhaps not necessarily in a flattering way. When the Portuguese first came and occupied Goa, that was their first colony, in 1510, Goa was under the Adil Shahis of Bijapur. So when they came and occupied, the Adil Shahi Sultan sent his army and he evicted the Portuguese. So those guys went and waited in their ships at the mouth of Mandavi River in Goa. The Adil Shahis could do nothing about it. When he came back to Bijapur, the Portuguese came, and this time they conquered it in a firmer way and did not give way. And that started colonization in our country. The lesson, ladies and gentlemen, is this, that the Bijapur Sultan had an army that could march 300 kilometers, but they didn't have a navy that could sail for 30 kilometers. If he had had a navy, he would have driven out the Portuguese. It is possible to argue, we don't know, it is possible to argue that there might have been no colonization of India, or we might have sort of delayed it. Now, remember, during the colonial times too, we had great acts of resistance. You had acts of resistance by the famous Kunali Marakkars of the Malabar coast. You had Rani Abbakka of Karnataka, close to Ullal. You had the mighty Marathas fighting the Europeans in the Konkan coast. And then you had the Wadia shipbuilders who built some of the best ships in the world. And then the Royal Indian Navy gave a great account of itself in World War II. Why am I telling you all this? I am telling you all this to suggest that maritime is in our DNA. If anyone tells that it was only the West that was sailing, that so-and-so discovered the world and so-and-so did, it is wrong. We were there in the Indo-Pacific. We were sailing long before many other parts of the world knew about this. So maritime is in your DNA. And that institutional memory ladies and gentlemen, is very, very important. And how does this come to play? 20 years ago, the Indian Navy's Western Fleet was operating in North Arabian Sea, or North Indian Ocean as we call it, and there they met the navy of another foreign country. I'll not take the name of that. So they exchanged greetings, and that navy asked the Indian Navy's admiral, "Hello, good morning, Indian Navy, how long have you been here?" So the Indian Navy's reply was, "We have been here before Jesus Christ. What about you?" Now this, ladies and gentlemen, is what I call having an institutional memory, having a sense of destiny about you. As Captain Gopi rightly said, the golden days are ahead of us, the golden days for Indian Navy, the golden days for India, and golden day indeed for all of you. The golden age is ahead of us. I would make an argument that the Indian Navy, in its 75 years of existence, has been a navy that dares and cares in equal measure. When I joined the Indian Navy in 1982, when I sort of decided, it was by accident, because my father was inspired by the school principal when he joined. It has been a wonderful accident, 36 years, but I hope that you would make more informed choices, perhaps after today's talk, in knowing what the Navy does. It brings you very, very close to operation. It brings you very close to technology. It's the real word. There is no working on computers. It's a real word of machinery, missiles, air conditioning, propulsion, weapons, and you'll get thrilled by that. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity of presenting the Indian Navy before you. Jai Hind, thank you, Shamno Varuna.